Good morning, everyone. If you can take your seats, please, we'd like to begin the program. Actually, we're a little bit delayed on the program. However, we wanted you to enjoy the environment, the atmosphere, and the relationships that you're going to be establishing today. How about that? Little did you know it's because of the weather and everyone's delayed. So good morning. My name is Zenaida Rodriguez, and I am the chair of the Competitive Edge Conference this year. At this time, I would like all of the Competitive Edge Committee to please stand so that we can acknowledge you. Thank you. On behalf of the Competitive Edge Committee, we welcome you to the 25th anniversary of the Competitive Edge Conference. Wow, a historical platinum level we have reached. Where were we 25 years ago with the MWBE program? Our theme, Small Businesses Winning in New York, stems from 25 years ago when the conference first originated. At that time, the MTA and Battery Park had a meeting over at Battery Park. Those in the meeting were someone by the name of Danny Camacho, which you probably all know. He is not here today, unfortunately. He's on vacation in Puerto Rico. However, he does send. He really is remiss that he is not here. And in memoriam, there was a giant over at Battery Park, Mario Torres, who has left us. And they had a meeting that they needed to expand the program that was being held at the MTA at that time, specifically New York City Transit. They wanted to expand it to other agencies. That meeting resulted in the Port Authority, New York City Health and Hospitals, Small Business Services, New York City Housing Authority, New York City School Construction Authority, and other agencies that began to expand and share best practices with each other on how we can continue to raise the level, the platform level for MWBEs and DBEs to gain access to contracting opportunities. Then throughout the years, it resulted, as you all know now, other agencies have joined us, the New York State Insurance Fund, to name a few. The agencies came together and created several programs in unison, and that's what created the Competitive Edge Committee. We are one of the largest conferences downstate, okay, that is a conglomerate of city and state agencies, and today we have corporate that has joined us in many areas to bring the technology, to bring social media access, to assist firms to come and enjoy, actually not enjoy, but to learn what the process is in advancing your companies in today's world. So I thank you for being here. Today you will have quite a bit of knowledge, quite a bit of education on where the agencies are today. Today we honor some of the small businesses that have been with us for a while and have actually excelled in their businesses. You will hear from them during the awards luncheon. You will hear from dignitaries, keynote speakers, agency heads to share best practices and advice on how you can advance your business into our agencies. So pull out your business cards. I'd like for you to also pull out your phones. We are on social media. If you have missed us, then I don't know where you've been, but we've been all over the social media advertising the conference. We have had inquiries from outside of the United States because of the social media. Today, you will learn how to move your business, follow those dollars in with social media access. So there are brand new initiatives that we have for you today. So at this time, what I'd like to do is bring someone up who has been a giant, and I'm not even going to say how long he's been with the MWBE program. If you've seen him 30 years ago and you see him today, then I guess that'll tell the difference. But Michael Garner started many years ago at the School Construction Authority and has been one of the giants that has actually resulted in making the program advanced through the United States and coming to the MTA and making it one of the best programs we have ever had in our agency. I'd like to welcome to the stage Michael Garner.
Thank you, Z, and good morning. Let me just give Z and thank her for her leadership and the whole entire committee for creating a platform that certified MWBEs can come and focus on contract opportunities. Too often times, people focus on problems and not the solutions. And the solution should always be, how can we eradicate the historical impediments that exist in the marketplace that prevents you from gaining access to agencies and contracts? So we cannot focus on problems, we gotta focus on solutions. And one thing about effective leaders, they focus on solutions. And in order for any organization, both in the private sector and also in government, to have effective MWBE programs, it emanates from leadership. There are certain agencies that you always hear about that have effective MWBE programs. DASNY, Paul Williams, who was a former president and CEO, made MWBE inclusion a priority. Lorraine Grillo has made MWBE inclusion at 2 agencies a priority. Rick Cotton, who is now at the Port Authority, has brought Mike Messiah back, and great things are going to happen at the Port Authority. Pat Foy at the MTA, he focused on inclusion. Now, these great leaders, they just don't wake up in the morning and think about MWBE, because they're focused on building schools safely, timely, and on budget, making sure that the subways are operating, and making sure that projects like JFK are going to be finished safely, timely, and on budget. But the key to that is that they hire competent staff, and they give them the resources and the budget for them to execute their missions of what they're going to do. And so far too often times, government, historically speaking, has failed because they put their whole entire emphasis on outreach and certification. So we meet you at an event like this, and we take you through an arduous certification process, and you're certified, and you come in, and you still can't work because the historical barriers are still there. And the new paradigm now is you build the program first, like the old baseball movie, Field of Dreams. You build it, and they'll come. So effective agencies are building programs, and now you're coming. So this morning, you're going to hear from numerous agencies and private sectors as how you can do business at that agencies. But just don't accept a business card and put it on your desk with your other 1,000 business cards just sitting there. Go back and make a phone call and go in and talk to the agencies who want to do business with you but may not know who you are. Just because you're certified does not guarantee you a prime or a subcontract. You got to come in, do your research on our organizations, and focus on where the gaps are. And your company's strength is going to be matched with our weaknesses, and great things will happen. So once again, thank you for being here this morning. And I would like to introduce a giant in the MWBE industry. He's called the Renaissance Man because he's not only an effective advocate for MWBEs, but he's also a religious man. And I often sometimes think that God empowers us to help those who can't help themselves. So this person is one of the leading voices of social equity and civil rights in this city, because if taxpayers' monies are being spent and a certain segment of the population are not getting their fair share of contracts, it's a social and civil rights issue that has to be addressed. And there's no other better advocate and speaker on behalf of you than the Reverend Jacques Andre DeGraff.
Good morning. I know it's early and we're downtown, but we can do better than that. So we're going to try that again. Good morning. Good morning. Excuse me, what time is it? What time is it? In fact, the answer is it's later than you think. We're celebrating 25 years right now of competitive edge. And if you turn the clock back to 1994, you remember 1994, the Dallas Cowboys beat the Buffalo Bills in the Super Bowl. The New York Knicks, they have a team, they lost to Houston in the NBA Finals in 1994. In 1994, they had an election, and a fellow named Newt Gingrich led the takeover of Congress. The President of the United States got in trouble for playing under his desk, and the rest is history, but those were challenging times, and the mayor of the city of New York was a fellow named Rudolph Giuliani. The doors for opportunity right now, they used to just be MBEs, then it became MWBEs, now it's MWLBEs, then it's MBLDBESDVO. So I'm going to just call you the community of opportunity. The community of opportunity are those who have been locked out prior to today. Not by Klansmen, not by Nazis, but by well-intentioned people who said, we've never done that before. We'd like to include you, but. And so the first thing we have to do today is salute those who were in government in 1994, who chose to light a candle in darkness and provide a way, to combine their resources, their networks, and their experiences. Because the truth be told, when you look through the journal and look at all these titles, they're dealing with people who didn't want many of us to be here. Well, they never came out and said it. They just said, well, the qualifications, they don't meet the qualifications. Well, how do you get the qualifications? You have to have experience, and they don't have any experience. Well, where do you go to get experience? Well, right here, but they don't have any experience. And so this group, the Competitive Edge, got together and pooled their resources and said, what if we cross agency lines? What if we disregard protocol and make it our business to empower the community of opportunity? So before we go any further, we ought to look back over 25 years and say we appreciate and celebrate the Competitive Edge. Would the Competitive Edge officials please stand? If you're part of this, stand up. Thank you. Now, the point that we're making here today is that those of us who fought for these programs, support these programs, didn't do it just so that you could get a contract. We didn't do it just so that you could get a new car. We did it so that you could create jobs in our communities and create wealth in our communities. That means that you would give back and grow our communities, because many of our communities in this day and age, particularly now, are under siege. And there's a bigger picture now in America. In a time in our country when children are in cages, in a time in our country when we've been divided by ethnicity, by religion, by who we love, how we love, and where we're going, it's time that this community, the competitive edge community, use the resources and come together in a new way. If we're going to get out of here, if we're going to go to the next level, then this conference has got to be more than how do I get a contract? How do I get paid? It needs to be about setting an agenda. You will hear today about 15A, and there are stalwarts in this room who went up to Albany time and time again to fight on your behalf. But half of you were never there. You were silent. Then you want to walk through the door, and when there's a problem with your contract, then you want us to come to the rescue. Well, it can't be like that anymore because there's too many people who have given too much for this day to occur. And we need to empower these officials in government, but we need to do something further. We need to set the standard and give them the agenda. Not in this room. We need to go to City Hall, the City Council, and the state legislature and say that this is our agenda. We celebrate the legislation that has been passed, but it was passed with a number of people who had never done it before. And so they thought history began when they got there, and they went for what some of us consider to be the okie doke. Well, what are you talking about, Rev? Glad you asked. When you pass a mandated policy without money, it's called an unfunded mandate. It's like, hey, we want you to do this, but we don't have any money. There were those of us who said when the state passed its multi-billion-dollar budget that it should have been in the budget. So that means that we have more work to do going back to the legislature this year. And instead of asking them what they can do, we need to tell them what they should do. We need to tell them to look at change orders. We need to tell them to look at payment schedules. We need to tell them that in agencies like this, rather than leave these appointed officials to do their jobs, we ought to have an agenda that says, hey, what about an advisory board? I know about an advisory board because through Lorraine Grillo, the SCA created an advisory board, a diversity council, that didn't deal with grievances but dealt with a partnership and created the most successful mentorship program in the city and the city's most successful diversity program. So each of you has the capacity to give some advice based on your experience and your resources. I understand that the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce is going to be here today, and Sulma Asu Brown is one of the great champions for progress, but everybody here ought to make it their business to be part of somebody's organization. Why? Because the New York Partnership, ABNY, BTEA, and a half dozen other organizations have full-time people pursuing their agenda. And believe me, every time we get a bill passed, every time we get a policy articulated, there's somebody who's saying if they don't like it, they're going to sue. They're going to do a lawsuit. And they go to hearings and they get transcripts. And they say, but you said, in 1995, you went to a hearing and you said. And we say, well, you know what I mean. No, they don't. They're organized and they're there every day. So while we're here today, we ought to be organizing. Somebody in this room is the answer to your prayer. Someone is looking for someone to do a joint venture. Someone is looking for someone to be on their board, to be an investor. That person is in this room or will be here during the day. We need not to see ourselves as supplicants because we have the power. Your answer is in this room today. So we're going to just take a 1-minute exercise. Pull out your business card. Don't act like you don't have a business card. Pull out your business card. Because you're business people, you came to a business meeting, so I know that you brought your business card. If you would stand, that means get up. That means everybody get up. That means you, sir. That means you. Everybody get up. And I want you to do this. It's an exercise to get the motor going, okay? I want you to give your business card to someone who's not at your table, look them in the eye in a New York kind of way and say, let's get together. I'm so glad you're here. That means you got to move. Look at somebody beyond your table. I see people from the SCA. I see people from DASNY. They want your business card. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Now, the same people who I had to ask to get up, I have to ask to sit down. Shh. We're going someplace. After 25 years, we should have learned some lessons. We should learn, first of all, how to say thank you and appreciate people like Paul Williams, who provided dynamic leadership at DASNY, raised the bar, fought the fight, and claimed the victory for us. And Paul Williams is here today, and we ought to thank him in a special way. So many other giants are in the room, so it's time for me to move, but I want to leave you with three points. In order for us to succeed, we're going to have to do what we know as the 3 ups. The first thing that we're going to have to do is show up. We're going to have to start making the meeting. Not just the big meeting, but the meeting before the meeting and the meeting after the meeting. What happened and why? Who's going to follow up? Did you bring the papers? We're going to have to start showing up. And then we're going to have to start showing up when there is no meeting. We're going to have to start showing up when there's a hearing, when the board meets. We're going to have to make our presence known. Why? Because those other folks are doing that. And you can't be in the game if you don't show up. And when you show up, you ought to show up with a ferocity and a determination unlike that has ever been seen before. My name is Jacques-Andre de Graaf, but my nickname is Jackie, after my hero, a man named Jackie Robinson. And they put him in the Hall of Fame not because he hit the most home runs, not because he stole the most bases. They put him in the Hall of Fame because of how he played the game, because every day Jackie Robinson came to the park. He came with 100%. He came to play the game. He showed up every day. If we are going to be successful, the least we could do is model ourselves after someone who changed the game. His name was Jackie Robinson. We have to show up. The second thing that we have to learn to do, and do much better than we're doing, is speak up. We have to speak up, and part of speaking up is listening. Did I see Lloyd Douglas somewhere? Lloyd Douglas has been on the battlefield a mighty long time. Some people judge Lloyd Douglas by his externals. You know what I'm saying. They judge him by his externals, and they don't listen to who he is and what he's done and where he's come from, because he's been part of every important progressive step in policy and legislation for the last 40 years in the state of New York. He has worked with every significant AG and every significant program. His name is Lloyd Douglas, and we need to get past his hat and get to what's under his hat. But the point is that if we're going to make progress together, then we have to, one, show up, and then we've got to speak up. We've got to be in the room and recognize that if you're the only one in the room, and on that day you're our ambassador, and you have to speak up for the rest of us. You have to make a difference and be a champion. And now, let's put this aside. We can't let people divide us. We don't have enough going for us. No agency has consistently reached the goal of 30%. So the M's and the W's, we got to get together. It always goes quiet at that point. You know what I'm saying? We need to see past our differences and start to work together in a better way. Because the way things are going, where different groups are being checked off and being divided every day, you don't know what day it's going to be your group. And we need to stand up for each other right now. So even as we're working together, we need to say something bad is happening in Puerto Rico. And you don't have to be Puerto Rican to care about it and want to do something about it. If the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce is here, we ought to be asking, what can we do to help? If we're going to work together and we're going to stand up, show up, and then speak up, we have to make a difference. We have to go to Albany this January with our own agenda. We have to go with our own agenda. How are they going to fund the mentor program at DDC? They passed one, but they didn't pass any money. They passed a lot of programs, but they didn't pass a lot of guidelines. So we're going to have to go to Albany to fix it. And we need to go together. But after we speak up, after we show up and after we speak up, the most important thing we have to do is stand up. We've got to start standing up for one another and standing together to make a difference. So that they say when they pass legislation, when they come up with these new ideas, and the new ideas are always wrapped in other new ideas, and they seem on the surface to be okay. You remember when organized labor came and said that they were concerned about safety, and in the original version, I'm stepping on some toes, I know. But when they passed the original version, it would have been penal. It would have been difficult, if not at all viable, for your businesses to proceed if you were in construction in the original intent. And so what we have to do is we have to identify our interests, Henry, and we have to put ourselves together and work in coalitions. And so the last thing we have to do is stand up. It's no good if we just show up. It's no good if we just speak up. We need to show up, speak up, and stand up for ourselves on a consistent basis. So the reason that you got your cards today was so that you know one more person than when you came in. Because here's what's going to happen. Everybody's going to talk to the elected official, the appointed officials, and give them their card and figure that based on that exchange that you're going to get some business. But guess what? There's 500 people here registered today. And if each of you gave Lorraine Grillo your card, where would we be? So give you each other your card so that you can do business with one another. I close on this note. Preachers always have stories, and I got a story. And my story is about a barnyard that had some chickens in the barnyard. And one day an egg rolled down the hill and hatched in the barnyard. And Bill, when the egg hatched, it didn't look like the other birds. Has anyone in this room ever had the experience of being other? You were in the room with other folks, but they looked at you as a woman and said, when is your husband coming? Is your father going to be at the meeting? Maybe somebody looked at you and said, could you get us a cup of coffee? Or before you got in the room, you heard somebody in a pre-conversation say, why don't they all go back where they came from? Have you ever been other? Well, this particular bird was a little bigger than the other birds. And when the bird walked, the other birds made fun of the bird. And no matter what they say to you, words matter, can you? Words can hurt, words can cut, words can sear into your soul. And so they used to call the bird the big dummy. Who do you think you are? You're not really one of us. And the bird tried to fit in. And you can't fit in by being somebody else. We can only be ourselves. But one day, off in the distance, there was a sound. And the sound began to grow louder and clearer. And the same bird felt something stirring inside. It began to straighten up and claim itself. It began to feel different just by the sound that was off in the distance. And as the sound got closer and closer, the bird began to stretch its wings and began to rise. The other bird said, who do you think you are? Where do you think you're going? And as the bird rose to join the flock of eagles, the bird said, I'm going to fly with the eagles because I'm not a chicken anymore. On this day, I challenge you to come and fly with the eagles. Make a difference in New York because the nation is watching. Our communities are waiting. And when we work together, we'll fly with the eagles and we'll be sure to make the promise true that the best is yet to come. God bless you today.
Please stand and give him a round of applause. He's one of our... Thank you, Reverend. Thank you so much. Well, I guess we're ready for a program. So let's jump into the plenary session. But before we do that, the Reverend had mentioned that we need to build synergy and start looking at our advocacy organizations. And the Competitive Edge would not be here today in this venue if it weren't for the New York City Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, who stepped up to the plate. Nick Lugo, please stand. Thank you so much. So let's jump into the plenary session. And the moderator for the plenary session, most of you do know with her talented work on marketing that she does for some of our agencies, Dr. Renee Sachs. We'd like to bring her up with her plenary speakers. Please come up, Renee.
Good morning, everyone. So, we're going to be a little challenged with time, but we're going to try to pick up time and make sure that we can open the Competitive Edge Conference today with some stimulating ideas that will really challenge you to really maximize your experience here. Many of you know me in terms of our marketing work. Others of you know me as my work in advocacy for the Women Builders Council and through Diversity Agenda, and I'm really excited to be here. But more exciting is to bring up the panelists who are all game changers in their own right. So if I can just announce them, their bios are in the, thank you, their bios are in your program book. And I think each one of them will contributes to what is becoming the new minority and women business enterprise and SDVOB enterprise community in New York State and New York City. So Gerard Bushell, President and CEO of the Dormitory Authority of the State of New York. Thank you, Gerard. No, right over there. We'll just leave a seat for me. So move one down, okay. Lorraine Grillo, President and Commissioner, respectively, of the New York City School Construction Authority and the New York City Department of Design and Construction. Carrie Jew, Executive Vice President and Chief Administrative Officer of the New York City Housing Authority. Michael J. Garner, Chief Diversity Officer of the MTA. Michael Messiah, Chief Diversity and Inclusion Officer at the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey. And Ginger Siegel, North American Small Business Lead from MasterCard and a new face to this community. Thank you, Ginger. All right, so logistically, you did leave me a seat. That's good. I think we're going to share some mics. Let me just... Are these on? Are these on? On? Everybody can hear me? Is the microphone working? Yes. All right, so can you just each try to share? Not working. AV? Can you hear me without a mic?
Testing.
I'm not as robust as Reverend DeGraff.
Testing. Testing.
Check, 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 check. Check.
That's easier. We know how the mics. So then you have more mics. All right, so what we want to do is have a conversation with people who have really, really changed the game in New York State and New York City. So I'm going to go with the first question. From your experience, and I may call on one of you, and if you want to answer, please do. What are the factors that really contribute to business success? What do the people in the room here today need to know that will make them a better company when they leave here this afternoon and into tomorrow? So I'm going to actually, Ginger, could you respond to that?
Hi, good morning, everyone. Can you hear me? Great, great. I think one of the challenges that business owners have today is that you are everything. You're the marketing officer, you're the financial officer, you're the technology officer. And I believe that the thing that really, really helps small businesses thrive is to surround yourself with the type of people who can advise and guide you through your successful growth. You really can't do it alone. And having a good plan, but then building that plan and surrounding it with the support mechanisms is critically important.
Michael, Messiah?
I'm going to plead the fifth in a way because I'm not a business owner. So what I did was I asked some of our successful business owners how would they respond to that question. So a few observations from this brief survey. One of our construction owners said, embrace technology to streamline your operations. Practical. It makes them more efficient and effective. Fully understand your project documentations before you bid. And he meant you need to know the specs, obviously, and the as-built, but equally important, the operational conditions under which you're going to perform your tasks, because that all leads to the right kind of means and methods that you have to implement to do the job. So those are extremely important factors. The other important thing he said was gain a reputation for providing excellence at all levels within the organization that you're working for. That's an important point. Sometimes you just focus on the local supervision, but what is your reputation with the operational people, the security people that you have to work with in order to get your job done? Here's an important one. Helping the other trades that are on the project to get the job done, because it's all about the job, not your specific limited task. And then he also said, if you lack experience in a particular area, make it up in effort. All very important points. And then one last thing. We talked to a professional person who does work with us. He said he learned from the big companies he worked with before he went into his own business. And he took those lessons and he applied them to his own firm. So in other words, he was small, but he acted big. And then the last thing he said was he took advantage of being small, because being small allows you to be nimble and flexible and to be able to service the client in an ad hoc way, not based upon the original package that you bid on, but what that client needed at the time, and was agile enough to respond to those needs.
Thank you, Michael. How many of you actually implement what Michael noted? How many of you have a no-go? I'm sorry, we're not going to take questions at this time. How many of you have a no-go vetting criteria for doing a job or not doing a job? How many of you pass on jobs? How many of you have that system in place where you look at a job and you say no to it? You don't bid on every job. Not enough of you. Not enough of you. The job has to be right for you. Thanks, Michael. Lorraine, do you want to respond to this question? Do you remember the question? What are some of the characteristics that really contribute to business success?
Can you hear me, everyone?
Yes.
Oh, good. Well, for us, as well, since I have 2 construction agencies right now, it's always knowing your client. It's always knowing what's expected of you and delivering on time. That's the most important thing when you're dealing with government. And it has to be not only on time, but it has to be cost effective. So those are the 2 things when you're working with New York City government that you really always have to remember.
Okay. Gerard, do you want to respond to that?
I would just say integrity, operational excellence, strong execution. So we never want surprises. That is hugely important. Lots of communication and collaboration. So, but the bedrock is really understanding the scope of work, the scope of responsibility, and how to collaborate and communicate with us. That becomes very important.
Thank you. You know, that's a really interesting thing. So when you bid on a government contract, you have a procurement process which sometimes limits you from getting answers to questions. You can ask questions, but you really aren't asking relationship questions and more information. So getting to know the agencies before a RFP is coming out or a bid is coming out is really essential. Mike Garner, do you want to weigh in on that? You can hold on to the mics, by the way. You can just share them.
So it was stated earlier to hire people who have more competency than you. There was a a Ford auto worker who worked in the manufacturing plant in Detroit, who had a vision of creating a music company that evolved into Motown. So he took the same concept of a manufacturing process and created a music company. And he said, Barry Gordy, he said that if I'm the smartest person in the room, it's a problem. So you got to hire people who have an expertise in areas in which you are not strong. One. Second, more practically speaking, everyone in this room, you want to do business, but you're not going to do business with each one of these organizations up here. I would say that you pick your top two and you exchange cards with us and you come in to see us after this robust event. And you focus on where our weaknesses are or where the opportunities are going to be. And you come in because people do business with who? With people who they know and their trust. And so I would say that is an assignment for you this morning to come in and see us, not all of us, but pick your top two agencies.
Carrie, thank you, Michael. Carrie, do you have a last thought on this question?
You know, I think my colleagues have all said it, and just to summarize, I think it's really important for businesses, for small businesses in particular with limited resources, to really focus on what you need to do and really hone in. Do your homework beforehand. It's really too late once the RFP is out to start thinking about what package you're going to put together. You really need to network with each other, with the right agencies that you want to do business with, understand what all the rules are. I think that a lot of times small businesses are discouraged by doing business with government agencies. I represent NYCHA. Our procurement rules are different than other city agencies, but that doesn't mean that you can't do business with us. It just means that if you pick NYCHA as an agency that you want to work with, learn the ins and outs of our procurement rules, how you attend our pre-bid conferences, how you get to know us, how you get to know the primes who work with us, and that will help you gain entry into our opportunities.
Thanks, Carrie. And that's something, does everybody know that NYCHA is under different regulations for procurement than the other agencies and authorities sitting here? How many of you didn't know that? I didn't know that. And I'm your best dummy. I always tell you that one. I don't know something, a lot of people don't know a lot of it also. So they're regulated by HUD. And so the regulations are different, the thresholds are different. So now I have another question. So while you're all trying to figure out how to get your next job, and these ladies and gentlemen are leading initiatives that have been historically game-changing, they're also continuing to change the game now with new programs. So I'm just going to ask each of them just to briefly identify what's new and what you need to know about that will actually change the way you bid and develop a relationship with each of them. Gerard?
So we have,
We're going to get the mics right, don't worry. We have a few minutes.
we have put in place a pilot project program. We're very excited about this, and we got legislative approval, a budget bill, and it is a pilot program in which we are going to work with a small subset of MWBE participants, and they're going to be pre-qualified to work with us. It's 5% of our capital budget, or no more than $20 million. It's small, but it's very exciting, and it's an opportunity to experiment and drive more change. That's number one. Number two, we are focused on capital access. So capital access, more in terms of surety bonding, working with a third-party administrator, making sure that we have the right banking relationships to support institutions like yourself. And then the foundational issue that drives everything we do, because we fundamentally believe that this is a business commitment. We've got to have impact, we've got to be efficient, we've got to drive change, and that is creating in our organization what historically was our Opportunities Program Group, which has been led by Michael Clay, who many of you know, but elevating, okay, his organization inside DASNY and making his organization the co-head of our procurement operation. That is hugely important because that strategically drives every decision we make with respect to a procurement. We've been very successful in terms of driving strategic partnerships, strategic relationships. More importantly, our head of procurement and Michael Clay, who are co-heads of the Procurement Opportunity Programs Group. So I meet with them every week, monthly. I meet with the teams. That is, my best people in the organization are inside this procurement operation, driving change in every business. That's the way you institutionalize change.
Thank you, Gerard. I just want to comment on that because I think it's important for all of us to understand. So we know the MWB liaisons in all of the agencies and authorities in New York State and New York City. That's probably over 150 different people. What is happening at DASNY, which is really interesting, is they're connecting the dots. They're putting together procurement and diversity for the benefit of MWB participation. That is new. That is game-changing. That is an interesting paradigm. We want to see how that will actually work over the next several months as that launches, in terms of what are the opportunities so that you're not talking, you've been on a job, everybody knows Michael Clay. We all know Michael Clay. We don't know your head of procurement. Mike?
So what is important, and that's the problem. That's the problem right there. You know Michael Clay, you don't know this person. That's irrelevant. What's relevant is our ability to create procurements that are visibly simple, all right, very easy to read. We can determine, as well as you can determine, if you want to do work with us. That's first and foremost. Secondly, make sure that we do market sounding. That's why we have put this team together, because we want to make sure that we're in the market understanding not just our goals, but our impact in terms of delivering a project on time and on budget, all right? We have a public mission, so we've got to be efficient, okay? We've got to be faster, we've got to be innovative, but we're driving numbers. That's where the governor is. Anybody who does business with the state of New York, and I tell this all the time, you cannot come into our organization without a clear understanding of that commitment, all right, that execution. So if you're doing poorly in your program, you got to show us something. What's your vendor participation? Who are you strategically partnering? We've been doing this for 3 years. 3 years. So this has been very successful.
That's great.
We hear from folks in New Jersey, across the country. How do you do this? We've been doing this for 3 years. So Michael Clay is a strategic partner at the top of the organization with 18 people who are strategic partners at the center of the organization.
Right. And that centers on the leadership from the top, driving the kinds of change that we need. Lorraine, can you weigh in on what's new at the SEA?
Sure.
Before you begin,
Yeah.
You've been innovative in almost every area, so what's new?
Absolutely. The Reverend alluded to our successful mentoring program. We've had that. It began with Michael Garner sitting next to me and has grown over the years under my current CDO, Suzanne Vera. It's very successful. We take emerging small contractors and work with them over years with construction management firms and grow those businesses. They graduate into our graduate mentor program, and so on and so on. But in addition to that, we never stop thinking of new things to do. So about 3 years ago, I had some random thoughts, and fortunately I have staff that can take those random thoughts and make them into actual practical practices. We started something called the Opportunity Academy. This is working with young people who are looking for new careers, where we give them an apprenticeship program, teaching them all of the back office paperwork that needs to be done in order to work with government, which can be endless. And not only do we train them in that paperwork, but then we put them to work with our small mentor contractors. It helps the contractors, and it helps the young people that are involved. And I will tell you, this is our 3rd year. Every single graduate of that Opportunity Academy has gone on to make, I don't know, quadruple, maybe 5 times the money that they were making. They have a career path, And those that are not working with contractors have started their own businesses. So that's a very, very successful program. The second one that we love, and I've always had this vision, I started at the SCA 25 years ago, I wanted to see a small minority mentor contractor grow over the years and become a contractor who can build a school from the ground up. So we put out an RFP. We got a lot of responses, and one of the responses was from one of our regular general contractors. And he went about training these mentor contractors to become his competition, and both of them, 2 out of the 3, have now built new schools. So that's another program that we're really excited about. And now, as we sat here listening to Reverend DeGraff earlier, we were talking about what we need to do to encourage MWBE young people to become architects and engineers. I recently sat with a group of architects from the Building Congress, 30, 40 architects, and I looked around the room and I saw 2 women and not a single black or brown face in that room. We need to do better. So that's our next thing. We haven't come up with the program yet, but we will.
Michael Garner, thank you, Lorraine. Michael Garner, do you want to, what's new at the MTA that the audience really needs to know about?
So we have a focus on creating opportunities and programs and then having the industry react to us as opposed to reacting to the industry. What do you mean? There's a discretionary bill that 96 state agencies and authorities in the state of New York had a $200,000 threshold. We went to Albany, we got a $400,000 threshold. The other 96 agencies and authorities wanted to increase their $200,000 threshold to $400,000 threshold. We said, let's do $1 million. We went up to Albany, and guess what? We have $1 million threshold right now where firms can come in. We have the ability at the MTA, and there's 6 different operating agencies, to reach out to 2 or 3 certified minority-owned firms, get pricing. As long as that pricing is in line with historical pricing, we'll make the award and not go out for a more broader RFP or pricing. So we are currently at $1 million right now, and the focus is IT, legal services, architect and engineers, and other vendors and other kind of suppliers. So that's what's new. What's also new is that we are creating a pathway for firms who graduate from our small business mentoring program, and we were successful because our first year of the program, we went and raided the shops of the SCA and lured a lot of their contractors over. And so I want to thank them for allowing us to be successful in our first 2 or 3 years. Thank you. And so now we are creating opportunities from $3 to $15 million, and a great thing is happening. A lot of graduates out of our program are now bidding on the open market and winning $10 million contracts, $12 million contracts, $15 million contracts, because they understand how to do business safely, timely, and on budget at the MTA. Third and final, we are one of the largest builders in the country of projects. We have East Side Access, that's a $12 billion project. We have Second Avenue Subway, that's a $8 billion project. We have Third Track, a $2 billion contract in Nassau and Suffolk County. However, on Second Avenue Subway, the joint venture indicated that they were going to put 15 paid college internship opportunities in their RFP. And so now we have City College, 40 and over students who are majoring in architect and engineering, and they are working in the offices of the M&W and DBEs. So we are developing future diverse talent, so when these kids graduate, we have a pool that we can hire in a very, very diverse manner. So those are some of the new things that we're currently doing.
Thank you. You know, in just respectful of time, I'm going to move to what you talked about, Michael, in terms of the increased discretionary awards. Everyone in the room, is there anyone in the room, please be honest, that does not know that the threshold for discretionary awards, which we'll talk about in a second, has increased to $1 million at the MTA? The board has approved that now? That's in place. And up to $500,000, it's up to $1 million from the lower thresholds. That will be effective January 20th, and I think there's a session that will discuss that. How many of you were not aware of that? Okay. So that is a really important piece of news for you to know about, because that really opens the door to getting a discretionary award, but it also suggests that you have to do some homework in terms of your relationships with agencies and authorities so they know who you are. So it's a real game changer. I wondered if, Lorraine, how will this impact
Sure.
the kinds of procurements that you're going to create?
Sure. Well, again, most of you know that I'm recently made commissioner of the Department of Design and Construction, which is a city agency. Now, they've had a great MWBE program, but it was largely compliance. Basically, the staff at the DDC really spent a great deal of their time just going through contracts, making sure that commitments that were made were adhered to. This larger discretionary dollar allows us, and it's something that we've been working on for the last year, to create what we call a business development unit. Basically, kind of mirroring what the SCA does, even though we're an authority and the rules are different, we now have some capability to actually go out, pre-qualify some MWBE firms, put them into and actually foster relationships that allow them to bid on certain types of projects, particularly using the $500,000 cap.
Thank you. In addition to the $500,000 cap for discretionary awards, the personal net worth, how many of you know that the new personal net worth cap, that is the exit requirement for the MWB program, has been increased? Do you all know that? To $15 million, which will allow construction companies and financial, it will change by industry also. It may increase. The $15 million cap is just the base by which you can continue to grow your business, and under special circumstances, ESD will review it. So there's a lot of change going on in the MWB community to allow us all to grow. We're no longer capped at $3.5 million and you're out of the program. You can't get bonding, you can't get a loan, you can't really be a company. And it's a little complicated because those of you, how many of you have ever read Article 15A? I don't really believe you, but okay. And the new bill, the reauthorization of Article 15A, is actually easy to read if you read it first, but it's something that you should take a look at, and there'll be some summaries of the new legislation so you can see what it really means for you. Because now New York City also, in a secondary bill, has agreed to go up to $500,000 for the city, which is something that the city had been advocating for. Recently, they wanted to go up to $1 million, but they reached $500,000. So that's important. Mike, how is that going to change things for the way procurements are going to occur at the MTA with up to $1 million? Mike Messiah.
Not at all.
I know. Not at all? No, it's okay.
Because the Port Authority is not subject to New York State law. We have a board that's appointed by both the governor of New York and New Jersey. So last February, we passed our new disparity study, and that resulted in us having 20% MWBE, MBE, and 10% WBE goals, 30% goal. In that resolution, we said that all of our categories of purchase are subject to the goal. The other thing is the Port Authority historically did not have a cap on personal wealth. Okay, so it's very little change for us. However, anything that they do in that legislation and other support programs we look at and we try to implement in our program. So if there are new programs and concepts, we'll try to implement. But a couple other things real quick. Some of the new programs we introduced help us get to the 30% goal that I just want to speak to briefly. Any architects and engineers in the house? Okay, so we have what we call A&E Principals Academy. We started late last year, and it's maturing through this year. And what we do is we take a cohort of MWBEs, and we put them through a boot camp that's specifically focused on the owners of the firm. ZWIG is an international known training organization for A&E firms. We hired them to run the boot camp. But what's most important is after that, we have them do a business plan. And there's a vendor in the room who is helping those firms develop their business plans. Then they're going to be put into our engineering department to learn how we do design work and the various services that are necessary to be successful, including BIM and all the intelligent systems that are now in play to do design. Third, we're going to be working with the private sector and having them get an internship, if you will, within those firms. We're going to start our second cohort, right, Keith, in a couple of months. So we'll have 15 going through now and another 15 going through over the next 12 months. This is an important program because these firms not only work for us, they work for many of the organizations that sit at this table. And what's interesting is, because they're in these cohorts, they're learning each other and their skills and capabilities. And something magical is beginning to happen. Keith Wright just had a group of architects and engineers come to his office in New Jersey to talk about creating an alliance of those firms. Some of them went to our academy so that they can compete for bigger businesses. So I just want to highlight that as an important. One other thing, when we talk about speed of delivery, because my colleagues up here know how important it is for the governor of New York to have speedy delivery. We monitor every project that we have that's active, and we want them to meet the milestones. One of the things we don't want to see happen is that the smaller firms get a lower rating in their speed of delivery. That's not acceptable. So what we did was introduce what we call a coaching program. We found some of the best MBEs that's worked with us, and we asked them to be coaches. We're paying them. And if a firm is struggling, we have that coach deployed to help take care of the particular issue with our agency so that they can get on track. I just want to highlight those two programs. So if you're an A&E firm, if you're a construction firm, come see us and we'll talk more about it.
Okay, because of time, I'm just going to ask one final question to each of the panelists, and it's really a very broad question. Because of the new legislation, which affects some of you and not all of you, what do you think the industry is going to look like for MWBEs in the next several years? Ginger?
Well, I think the new legislation is going to broaden the opportunities for, these really important segments. We know that there is an enormous piece of the GDP that these organizations drive, and with the new legislation, it's going to open up and broaden the ability of people to really reach out for a lot of these jobs, and I think that's going to be really critical. But I do think that in order to do that, it's going to be very important that they have the support with programs that are going to actually help them run their business more efficiently, because opening up the spigots without a strong foundation or back end, and I think you'll hear more about that later today from MasterCard, but we're developing partnerships with companies like Intuit to give discounts on QuickBooks and TurboTax. How many of you use accounting software in your business? Fantastic. How many of you use some kind of a system to track your sales? So we have now a partnership with Salesforce.com which is going to provide small businesses with CRM systems just for you. So it's important, in order to take advantage of the new legislation, to really make sure your business is shored up and you have the foundation to actually take advantage of it.
Thank you. Michael Messiah, before you answer, can you also address the opportunities at the airports, which are under your discretion?
Suzette Taylor is here. She's going to speak to that later in the day, but quickly. Terminal 1 Group, $7 billion terminal project. JetBlue, $3 billion terminal project. American Airlines, a terminal expansion. Terminal 4, Delta, terminal expansion. And then you have Delta ramping up quickly at LaGuardia. LPG, on the downside of finishing the project at LaGuardia. Terminal 1, the new Terminal 1 at Newark, active, looking for vendors through Munich for the operations of that airport. All these things in place, unprecedented anywhere in the world when you add all the stuff, all the projects up. LaGuardia being built while it's fully operational, a miracle, engineering miracle. It's going to be written about for years to come, notwithstanding the traffic hiccups that we have periodically. So impressive amount of work being done by the public sector in this region. And so all of us are here to say we're having capacity programs, we have training and development programs, our doors are open. As though, a little known secret that the Port Authority has, Airport Services Development Office, we hire them to link small businesses with opportunities with our airlines. Now, we're trying to do a reboot with ASDO. And as said earlier, they're under our focus on numbers as well. So we just met with them this week, right, Suzette? And we're saying, let's get creative, let's modernize, let's make sure that we're connecting to many of you who want to do business with the airlines. So when you come by our booth, you can hear more about ASDO and their obligations to us to network you within the airport community.
Michael Garner, what will the industry look like in the next several years from your perspective?
It would look more inclusive. There's so much work going on right now and led by the governor, who has indicated that not less than 30% of contracts that's being awarded by the 96 state agencies and authorities, not less than 30% will be awarded. So there's a lot of opportunity, both at the subcontract level and the prime level. I would say that we are in a unique time right now, that there's so much construction and so much building going on, but let's not also forget about the other kind of services. For example, when Paul Williams was the president and CEO at DASNY, we took our CFO over there and we put things in our RFP that allowed us to hire and retain a number of diverse investment bankers. And so the MTA is one of the largest issuers of debt in this nation. And so law services also as well. So we want to make sure that last year we spent $41 million in legal fees. We want to make sure that our Black, Hispanic, and Asian law firms are getting business, because we are in the Fortune 500 capital of the world, where billions of dollars of transactions are taking place every day. So we want to make sure that taxpayers have the opportunity to get business in this region, in the MTA's region, from Suffolk County all the way up to Newburgh, New York. That's 5,000 square miles. And one of our largest projects that we have right now, and there's going to be a major and a massive MWBE outreach, is Third Track in Long Island. That's a $2 billion project. We've identified $625 million in opportunities for MW and SDVOBs. So we are intentional, because we understand that these programs do not work unless it is intentional, focused, and making sure that the contractors who do business for us not only finish our projects safely, timely, and on budget, but also inclusive of our MWDB goals, so there's a win-win for everybody. So the marketplace is going to be more diverse.
Carrie, from your perspective, and if you could just add some thoughts on P3s and collaboration.
Yes, sure. So for NYCHA, we are under different rules than the rest of the city agencies. And so one of the things that I think will increase opportunities at NYCHA are our real estate development projects that have become more and more focused and targeted, and they're coming at a faster pace. So that's something certainly that small businesses can look into partnering with larger real estate development firms, into looking at those opportunities. The other thing I just want to mention is, so NYCHA's small purchase thresholds are much smaller than in the city and the state, but they are growing, and that has been one of the challenges that my team has had, and we really advocated for over the last couple of years. So just for example, I mean, it's almost like it's the Stone Ages. Our micro purchase threshold was $5,000. That's nothing. It's been increased to 10,000, which is still very small, but we've got to take baby steps to get there. And so we're really grateful that we've been able to increase that for our small purchases, which is purchases that don't need to be publicly advertised. For services, it's gone up to $250,000. Again, it's not a whole lot, but it's a way to get your foot in the door, to get to know how to do business with NYCHA, and to get to know other companies as well.
Lorraine, any final comments on what you think the industry is going to look like?
Sure. Well, again, SEA has just had our $18 billion five-year capital plan approved by the city. And DDC obviously is doing work while the federal government is still negotiating infrastructure work. DDC and the city of New York is not waiting. As you can tell as you drive through the city of New York and you see every street and road under repair, that's for new sewers and infrastructure. We'll be building out the East Side coastal resiliency to save Lower Manhattan. We will also be building out the smaller jails throughout the 4 boroughs to close Rikers Island. Those are all of the things that we're involved in right now. But I will say this. Right now, we have an administration in Albany, as well as an administration in the city, that is extraordinarily supportive of our efforts. We, sitting in this room, have to be vigilant that we do not let this opportunity slip by. That's really all I can tell you.
Thank you. Gerard, final thought?
So there's an incredible opportunity for more enduring capacity. That's clear. The governor has been driving that for a long period of time, and we're seeing the dividends of that. But saying that, what this really does and what we're doing, we don't work with just one industry. We work with many industries. So we work with construction, we work with legal services, we work with financial services. But I can tell you, what we're going to see, and we're seeing and doing, is we're seeing more creative opportunities, more creative enterprises. And so by building out capacity for smaller businesses, M's, W's, SDVOBs, that is an incredible opportunity for strategic partnerships. Those are things that we have done. We have done procurements where we have looked for strategic partnerships with an MWBE in the lead, okay, with a backstop from a majority firm. What else is underneath that, okay, in terms of we hold majority firms accountable, people. We have to, all right, because many MWBE firms their partners come out of these majority firms. So we also need to see inside of these organizations, all right, senior partners, all right, who are people of color, who are women. So that is very important in terms of driving that partnership. That gives us an opportunity to have more of a virtuous circle over time. Our general liability insurance, all right, was one in which we went to the marketplace to talk to everyone. We had the same broker for 12 years, same broker. And what I said to Michael as well as the team, every procurement has to be reevaluated every few years. That's just the principle. That's good business. We went to the marketplace, looked for a strategic partnership between MWBE and the lead and a majority firm. What we got coming out of that was an MWBE as the broker leading our general liability insurance. That was in 2017. That's a game changer. We're doing more of that across our businesses. So that discretionary area of $500,000, for us, small is beautiful. We're not as big as the MTA. We're not as big as the port, all right? We're not as big as SCA or NYCHA, but what we can do is we can fill in very small gaps that will create opportunities over time because we're seeing more smaller projects.
Thanks, Gerard. Before we close, I want to bring to your attention one important thing. The word partnership. Partnership is a driving influence on what you're going to do for the balance of the day. How you're going to connect with people, whether you can create partnerships, trusted partnerships with them, and begin to work with the agency as a partner. I think you see it here from the panelists. The other thing I'm going to do is call to your attention 2 other events. You knew I would do this. Next week, City University of New York and the City University Construction Fund is holding their annual conference for MWBs and SDVOBs. Gerard's team is participating because they have a partnership with the City University Construction Fund. And there are new things in real estate, new programs in mentor-protege programs on the City University side that are occurring. I urge you to attend. It's July 31st, and you can register at cunybiz.com. The second event, because these events take your time, it's hard to get there, and it's harder to get to Albany. So I urge you to look at your calendars on on October 2nd and 3rd for the New York State MWB Forum. New York State is leading the nation with a 28% plus goal of utilization, and I think it's $2.5 billion in contracts awarded in fiscal year 2017-2018, last year. So there's a great deal of change here, a great deal of opportunity. Mark your calendars, but the people that are sitting here, these professionals, have changed the game for you. They have created the opportunity to have inordinate more opportunities. So take advantage of it, enjoy your day, and thank our panelists.